Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. From Boundary to Bear Lake, Fremont to Payette, Oahe to Oneida, there are interesting people, places, and histories in all of Idaho's counties. And Idaho Matters wants to share it with you with stories from all 44 counties that make up the Gem State. Email your ideas to idahomatters@boisestate.edu or use the Talk to Us feature in our app, available on Apple and Android, and tune in each weekday at noon for Idaho Matters.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Samantha Wright, filling in for Gemma Gaudette. It's Idaho Matters. Could lithium be the key to Alzheimer's disease? There's a groundbreaking new study out. It's got millions of families who are affected by this devastating illness asking a lot of questions. Plus, a nasty virus is spreading in China. And we're also going to answer the age-old question today: are French fries really bad for you? It's Wednesday, time for our Doctor Roundtable with Dr. David Pate, former CEO of St. Luke's Health System and the co-author of the book Preparing for the Next Global Outbreak. Dr. Pate, welcome back.
Hi, Samantha.
If you have a public health question, send us an email. It's idahomatters@boisestate.edu. Okay, Dr. Pate, it took me about 60 seconds to read all of that stuff you just heard. And about every 60 seconds, someone else is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It's a devastating illness. It hurts not just the person who has it, but their entire family. Estimates right now put it at 7 million Americans have it. It costs billions of dollars each year, maybe trillions. So you can see why there's a lot of interest in this new study. It's out. It looks at whether lithium could be the key to Alzheimer's, and you have to break it down for us. So what is this study all about?
So this is a study that was done partially on humans who had passed away and donated their brains because they had cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease for further study. That was the first part of the study. And what they were able to demonstrate is that compared to people without Alzheimer's or cognitive issues, that these persons' brains had low levels of lithium in the normal parts of the brain. What was happening is that the amyloid plaques, which are a big part of what we think is part of the cause of Alzheimer's, they actually suck up all the lithium to it, and then that lithium is not available to the normal tissue. And the way they were able to tell that is by looking at parts of the brain that are not typically involved with Alzheimer's, like the cerebellum back in the back of the brain. And it was fine. It had normal levels of lithium. So lithium, they tested for like 27, 28 metals. Lithium was the only one that presented this issue. So the next thing is they looked at mice. And what they did is they took some mice and gave them a gene that would be similar to a human gene that would cause the amyloid plaques to occur in these mice, because no other animals other than humans that we know of get Alzheimer's disease. So we have to do this to kind of cause it in the mice. And then what they did is to study to see what if they took lithium out of the mice diets, what would happen? And the answer is that they saw inflammation occur, and then these cells that normally are supportive and and surround your brain cells, they got activated, and you started accumulating a lot of this amyloid plaque that we know is bad for people with Alzheimer's. And they started losing some of the brain cells, and they developed worse cognitive function and memory. So that was certainly intriguing. And then they tried giving back lithium to the mice, and they were able to show some reverses in the loss of memory and cognitive functioning. And so that has led to some hope and some promise that perhaps we need to pursue this route in humans to see if, in fact, lithium and a special form of lithium could be beneficial.
Now, this is kind of a new theory. It honestly sounds like a very simple solution to a very complex, awful problem. And I guess my question is, could it really be that easy? You take lithium and then you don't get or start to reverse Alzheimer's?
It could be, but I am very skeptical. I'm hopeful. Listen, let me tell you, this is a dreadful disease. So many of your listeners, I'm sure, have family members that are impacted by this. I would love for something, especially as simple as lithium, if that works out. Here's why I'm skeptical. First of all, scientists have a saying that mice lie and monkeys exaggerate. And what that means is that, like I said, mice don't normally get Alzheimer's. So we have to create some of the same disease findings in them, but it's not the same disease. And so, what the saying means by mice lie is that there may be things that we test in mice and they look great, but and we have this history, particularly with Alzheimer's. We've had so many early on very promising suggestions that when we tried them out in humans, they just didn't work out. So that's one thing. The second is that we actually have a medical condition that we already treat with lithium, and that's bipolar disorder. And if you look at bipolar patients with bipolar disorder, they have a much higher risk of developing dementia
Hmm.
and Alzheimer's like disease than the normal population. So the natural question would be, well, we give them lithium, and in fact, we give them high doses of lithium. Does that prevent them from getting dementia and Alzheimer's disease? And the answer that we have so far from studies is mixed bag. It does reduce their risk of dementia, but it only reduces it from the high level that bipolar folks have anyway down to what the risk is in the general population, which means I do think lithium is an important consideration and it may be part of the answer. I'm skeptical that it's the whole answer, especially because we know Alzheimer's has so much variation. We know there are some like 20 genes that could impact your risk of Alzheimer's. We know that some people get early onset disease that is very different than late onset disease. There's so much variation. I'm not sure there's going to be a simple single answer, but I am excited by this. We need to test it out. One of the reasons that I do have some hope is one of the most important things to come out of this study was the lithium that we use to treat the patients with bipolar disease is lithium carbonate. And what they were able to show is that is the lithium that gets sucked up by these plaques and then isn't available to the normal tissue. What they did is they modified it to a different form of lithium orotate, which chemically modifies it so that the plaques don't take it up, and now it's available. And in fact, we can use it at dramatically reduced doses to test and see if this will help for humans because it's much more available. So let's see. It's promising. We need to pursue it, but I hate to get people's hopes up that we're on to a magic bullet. I'm not sure that that's the case.
Well, Dr. Pate, as someone who's seen the effects of dementia in my family, I have to say, I saw the study and went online and looked up a lithium supplement, popped it into the cart, and then sat there and looked at it for a minute and said, I'm going to ask Dr. Pate. So I'm going to ask you, should we all go out and start taking lithium supplements now, even though we don't have, all of the results or know for sure? And what's the danger if you do start to do that? Can you take too much of lithium? Can it be a bad thing?
Yes. So my answer would be it's way too early to recommend to people that they take lithium. You're likely getting lithium in your diet, and it's in an awful lot of different foods, including the notorious food that you want to talk about later, potatoes. But I would not supplement. The reason is that this is not one of those cases that, well, if a little bit is good, a lot more will be better. As you insinuated in your question, it can cause a lot of problems. In fact, we struggle with that all the time, treating these patients with bipolar disorder. We have to monitor their levels very carefully because it has a very narrow, what we call therapeutic window, which means you need to get it just right. Not enough won't help the patient. Too much is going to hurt them. You can get abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea, confusion, uncontrolled tremors, disturbance of your gait in walking, slurred speech, a condition where you get really, really high body temperatures and fever. You can go into coma if it's way too high.
Ugh.
It can kill you. You can get kidney injury. There's so many things that really we would not recommend anybody be messing with the dose of lithium on their own.
Gotcha. Okay, so long story short, wait and see. Study does not, obviously recommend you go out and start taking it. And an aside, we're going to have to find a study where something does say that, where it does say, go eat this or go take this, you'll be fine. I don't think we've run into that yet on this show.
I'll be on the lookout.
Okay, good. Tell me about a new nasty virus. Well, it's not new. A nasty virus that's spreading in China. It's hard to say. What is it, and why are people worried about it?
Yeah, in fact, we have briefly talked about this on the show before. This virus is called chikungunya, and it is a virus transmitted by mosquitoes. So, why does it have such a weird name? Well, it first appeared around 1952 in Tanzania, and in the Kimakonda language, chikungunya means that which bends up or becomes contorted. And it's their those native people's observation that people that got chikungunya were in extreme pain, and that was because it tends to cause very painful and even potentially swollen joints, and people would be kind of bent over either in pain or when trying to walk, and so that's where it got its name. And this virus, like I said, is transmitted by mosquitoes. From the time you get the mosquito bite to the time you get ill is less than a week, typically 3 to 7 days. And then people will, if they get infected, they will start to have fever, rash, feel very tired. And oftentimes it resolves in about a week time, but it will be a week of hell because of that joint pain that I talked about. And unfortunately, in some people, even though they recover from the acute illness, they continue to have the joint pain for weeks or months, or it's even been reported for years after.
So, but it's in more than 100 countries has reported it. Why is China kind of going a little? I don't know. They're out spraying all over for mosquitoes. They're really attacking it. What's the motivation? Do we know why China is so much trying to stop it?
We do. So the outbreak in China is in a province called Guangdong, and it has already infected about 8,000 people. And so, why this is of concern to the Chinese government is that there's no expected immunity in their population because chikungunya has really been a disease of the southern hemisphere and the tropics,
Hmm.
where these mosquitoes particularly thrive. But what we have seen with climate changes is that some of these mosquitoes are and the viruses they carry are moving northward. And what is concerning about these 110 now countries that have cases is that this may be now a problem for countries that never dealt with it before because of the climate issues. In fact, when I talked to Gemma about this, it was in the setting that cases were announced as having occurred in France.
Mm.
And so, if you think about all that geography stuff, and it's apropos on the first day of school for many kids, we're around the same latitude
Oh.
as these countries. And so, the concern is it going to be coming up into the United States? Normally, when we see cases, we only see it in travelers that are Americans that come back and they're sick from getting it in South America or Central America. But what we have seen back in, I think it was 2019, we did actually see some local transmission, I believe in Florida and Texas. Not much, but now the fear is that this, and frankly, some other mosquito borne diseases like yellow fever, other things that we haven't had to deal with in an awfully long time, might be coming back and might make their reappearance in the United States.
Okay. You published a new blog post this week about COVID, covering everything we now know about the illness, from everything like transmission to incubation period. Can you give us some bullet points? This is a very in depth post. What are the highlights?
Well, thank you, Samantha. Yes, this was the first blog post that I have written, really, other than the tribute to my wife since my wife's passing. And I thought that because we hadn't discussed COVID in some time, and of course, there's some popular notions that it's all over and so forth, that I thought it'd be a good time to give everybody, bring them back up to date. What do we know about COVID? Because right now there's a lot of disinformation being circulated at the highest levels of our public health by the Secretary of Health and others. And I'm going to deal with that head on in my next blog post. But this blog post gives people the background, and it covers a good overview of all the things that we've talked on about this show for the last 5 years and brings people up to date. But it also points out some things that people may not be aware of. So, for example, I think that if I gave your listeners a pop quiz right now and said, what age group is hospitalized at the highest rate, numbers per 100,000, I think everybody would probably get it right at 75 and above. And then if I asked, well, what's the next age group? My guess is 95% of the audience would answer 65 years and above. And that would be wrong.
Hmm.
It's 6 months and under.
Ooh.
And I think people do not appreciate the risks to children. And this is important because the secretary came out and made what seems to be unilateral decision that COVID vaccine would not be recommended for pregnant women. This is a huge mistake. And I give some data in my review to let people know that what kind of risk factors make you at more risk for severe disease. And in fact, pregnancy is one of those. So a lot of background that's going to be real helpful as I prepare with the next blog post to dig in very deep and granular on what the NIH director, what the FDA director, what the Secretary of HHS are saying about COVID vaccines and dismantle that point by point with facts. Then your listeners can decide, do they want to get vaccinated, and who should get vaccinated? But people are going to have the correct facts instead of the disinformation that's being circulated.
Well, and one of the things, like I said, there's a lot in there. You look at we remember the case of the choir practice in Mount Vernon, Washington, where folks went to a church choir practice, and one person there had COVID, and by the end of the practice, almost all of them had COVID, and so there's been a lot of research into transmission and droplets and all of that. And you break that all down wonderfully in the post, which we will link to. You also talk about this idea that COVID is over. You have some numbers to refute that, including how many people have gotten COVID, say, in the last 10 months. It's pretty high.
Yes, it's still happening. Thank God. The days of our hospitals filling up like they did in the winter months of 2021 to 2022 when Omicron emerged. Thank God that's behind us. And I don't think we're going to see it, but I do point out in the blog post that although there's not many places talking about it, there are still a lot of Americans being impacted by the disease, both in terms of getting infections, and I explain why infections are not necessarily innocuous and why you might still want to minimize the number of infections you get, but also the numbers of people still being hospitalized, still dying with it. It's not trivial. Thank God it's not what it used to be, but it's not trivial. And we do need to be concerned that as all of this vaccine disinformation is spread, that people are going to stop getting the updated COVID boosters. And I give some information to show that there still are benefits to getting that. And I will go into it a lot more in the next blog post. But some very important things there. And then also, I think people do not understand the role of ventilation, as you mentioned, and that choir study that I go into some detail. I remember the day that I was hearing about that, and I thought, oh my gosh, this virus is airborne transmitted and causing super spreader events, because the normal person that would get infected with COVID would be expected to infect 2 to 3 people. For those of the listeners that remember the Diamond Princess cruise ship that got stuck offshore because there's such a big outbreak back in February of 2020, I explained that the rate of infection on that ship, which is a kind of a closed system, was 2.28, and so that's how many you would expect. Yet this one person that we know of that was infected, it showed up at the choir practice with, I think, 61 people. Something I don't remember off the top of my head, but something like 52 people got infected. 3 people, I believe, were hospitalized and 2 died. And that's from one person. And so that's the impact that a super spreading event happens. And then I explain what we now think we know about why some people are super spreaders.
A lot in there to break down. Good information. Dr. Pate, we get this every so often. A study comes out and says French fries are bad for you. And we've got a new one from Harvard. So are French fries bad for you?
Oh boy, I don't want to get run out of town here, Samantha. But I think the takeaway from this study is that it's not necessarily that potatoes or even French fries necessarily are bad for you. But what this study showed that in a group of people having French fries, 3 or more times a week compared to those that had French fries less frequently, the higher frequency group had a 20% increase in the development of type 2 diabetes. Now, what is important from this study is that was not seen, in other words, the increased risk for diabetes, if the potato was baked, if it was boiled, if it was mashed. It was really deep frying the potatoes. And particularly appears to be worse is if you're using animal fats to fry it. So I think the takeaway is the old saying, all things in moderation. But certainly as a good Idahoan, I want to recommend everyone to eat potatoes all the time, but mix it up. Maybe it's a baked potato. Another time, maybe it's mashed potatoes. Another time, maybe they're boiled, or you put them in some stew or something like that. But potatoes are a very good source of nutrition. And one thing, here's a free tip, no added charge to you listeners. If you can keep the skins on your potatoes, even better. I always try to keep the skin on the potatoes when I'm having them. That is going to give you more fiber, more minerals. It's good for you. And then you can still have French fries. But one thing you might consider and is really tasty is doing them in an air fryer, or at least just use vegetable oil. Or sometimes I'll take cut up French fries, I'll spritz them with olive oil, and then and when they're done, add some rosemary. It's really good. So there's lots of ways to get creative about this, but you probably shouldn't be having McDonald's or Wendy's fries or whoever that's going to be deep frying them. Don't do that every day or every other day.
Good recipes from Dr. Pate. I had more questions about this, but we're out of time. We've been speaking with Dr. David Pate, former CEO of St. Luke's Health System and the co-author of the book, Preparing for the Next Global Outbreak. If you have a question for our Dr. Roundtable, send us an email at idahomatters@boisestate.edu. We'll answer it next week. Dr. Pate, thank you so much.
You're welcome. That does exhaust my list of recipes, though. Sorry.
Very good. Very good. We'll see Dr. Pate again next week.
This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudette.